Male and female. Let's start with the basics. Male and female. Traditionally, these have been tied to biological sex. Males are typically born with XY chromosomes, and females with XX. But here's the twist. Not everyone fits neatly into these boxes. Some people are born intersex, meaning they have a mix of male and female biological traits. So, from birth, gender can already be more complex than the simple male-female divide. Non-binary. This is where things start to get really interesting. Non-binary people don't identify strictly as male or female. Think of it like this. If gender is a spectrum, non-binary folks hang out somewhere in the middle, or maybe even off the chart entirely. They might feel like a mix of both genders, neither, or something else entirely. What's surprising to some is that non-binary identities have been around for centuries in cultures around the world. So it's not just some new trend, it's part of human history. Genderqueer. Now, genderqueer is a bit of a catch-all term. It's often used by people who reject the binary idea of gender altogether. Genderqueer people might mix and match gender traits, or even see themselves as a blend of genders. It's like they're saying, why pick just one flavor when you can have a whole swirl? They're challenging the traditional rules, and in doing so, they're expanding how we understand gender itself. Two-spirit. In many indigenous cultures, there's a concept known as two-spirit. This isn't just a gender identity, it's also a spiritual role. Two-spirit people often embody both masculine and feminine qualities, and are seen as having special wisdom and insight. It's a reminder that gender is not just about how we see ourselves, but also how we relate to our community and the world around us. Gender fluid. Now, let's talk about gender fluid. Imagine waking up each day and deciding whether you're feeling more masculine, feminine, or something else entirely. That's kind of what it's like for gender fluid people. Their gender identity can shift over time, sometimes even from day to day. It's like having a wardrobe with endless possibilities, and that freedom can be incredibly liberating. But it can also be confusing for those who are used to more fixed identities. Bigender and pangender. Bigender and pangender are like the overachievers of the gender world. Bigender people identify with two genders, either simultaneously or switching between them. Pangender folks take it even further. They identify with all genders. Yes, all of them. It's like they're on a mission to collect them all, like Pokemon. And while that might seem overwhelming to some, it's just a natural expression of their identity for others. Cisgender. If you're cisgender, it means your gender identity matches the sex you were assigned at birth. So, if you were born with male anatomy and you identify as a man, congratulations, you're cis. It's kind of like getting your order exactly as you wanted at a restaurant. No surprises, just what you expected. But don't get too comfy. There's a whole world beyond cisgender that's way more interesting. Transgender. Transgender, or trans, is an umbrella term for people whose gender identity doesn't match the sex they were assigned at birth. So, if someone was born female but identifies as male, they're transgender. Here's the shocking bit for some. Being trans isn't a new thing, and it's not a phase. People have been transitioning in some form or another for centuries. It's just that now we're finally talking about it more openly. Androgyne. Androgyne is where things get stylish. Androgynes blend masculine and feminine traits in a way that's unique to them. Imagine mixing the best of both worlds and creating something entirely new. Some androgynes might feel like they're a perfect balance between male and female, while others might lean more towards one side but still incorporate elements of the other. It's all about that blend. Intersex. Intersex people are born with biological characteristics that don't fit typical definitions of male or female. This can be in terms of chromosomes, hormones, or anatomy. For a long time, society tried to squeeze intersex people into the male or female box, often through unnecessary surgeries at birth. But here's the deal. Intersex isn't as rare as you might think. About 1 in 1,500 babies are born intersex. It's a natural variation in humans, just like having different hair or eye colors. FTM. FTM stands for female to male, describing a transgender person who was assigned female at birth but identifies and lives as a male. It's like flipping the script on what everyone thought they knew and saying, nah, this is who I really am. FTMs may undergo hormone therapy, surgery, or other medical treatments. But it's important to remember that every trans person's journey is unique. The point is, we are all human trying to be comfortable in our own skin. Identigender. Identigender is a term that combines autism and gender identity. People who identify as identigender feel that their experience of gender is closely linked to their experience of being autistic. For them, understanding their gender is tied to their neurodiversity. This identity highlights how diverse gender experiences can be, especially when intersecting with other aspects of who we are. Gender bender. This is all about intentionally mixing gender cues to challenge traditional ideas of gender. It's like throwing on a suit with a pair of high heels or wearing makeup with a beard. The goal is to confuse and disrupt the gender binary, making people question what they think they know about gender. It's bold, it's in your face, and it's a way of saying, you don't get to define me. Multigender. Multigender people identify with more than one gender at a time. It's like having a collection of identities that you carry with you. Someone might feel like there's several genders simultaneously, or switch between them depending on the day. It's a bit like being multilingual, except with gender. It's not about confusion. It's about embracing complexity. Gender queer. Gender queer is a broad term for anyone who rejects the traditional binary of male and female. It's about not fitting into the boxes that society has set up and instead creating your own space. Genderqueer people might mix masculine and feminine traits, identify as neither, or even create a new gender identity altogether. It's like saying, screw the rules, I have green hair. Omnigender. Omnigender is like the ultimate gender buffet. People who identify as omnigender experience all genders at once or switch between them. Imagine having a menu of gender identities, and instead of picking just one, you enjoy a bit of everything. It's a recognition that gender can be fluid and multifaceted, and it's about embracing the full spectrum of gender experiences. Gender void. Gender void is a term used by people who feel a complete lack of gender. It's like having a blank space where most people have a gender identity. They don't feel connected to any gender at all, which can be freeing, but also confusing for others to understand. Gender void people often find comfort in this absence of gender, and it's their own way of navigating the world. Gender broken. Gender broken is a term for people who feel that their gender identity is fractured or disrupted in some way. It's like trying to piece together a puzzle, but realizing that some pieces just don't fit right. People who identify as gender broken might experience their gender in a way that feels inconsistent or unstable. It's a way of expressing that their relationship with gender is complex and not neatly defined. Agender flux. A gender flux refers to people who experience fluctuations in their sense of being a gender. They might generally feel a gender but have occasional moments where they experience a connection to gender. It's a bit like being on a gender roller coaster, mostly feeling like you're without gender, but sometimes you catch a glimpse of something else. It's a way of acknowledging that gender identity can ebb and flow, rather than being fixed. Neutro-gender. Neutro-gender refers to a gender identity that is neutral, or is a mix of multiple genders, but doesn't fit into the traditional male or female categories. It's like being in a space where gender doesn't strictly apply, or where it exists in a different form. Neutro-gender individuals might feel that their experience of gender is outside the usual binary, or fluctuates in a way that feels neutral or indeterminate. Maverick. Maverick is a term for people who identify with a gender that is independent of the traditional binary system of male and female. It's often described as a distinct, non-binary gender that operates on its own terms. Think of it as a rebellious gender that refuses to fit into any predefined boxes, embracing an identity that's uniquely its own. It's all about carving out a space that defies conventional gender norms. Metagender. Metagender is a concept for people who have a gender identity that encompasses multiple genders or transcends traditional categories. It's like having a gender umbrella that covers a broad spectrum or all possible genders. Metagender individuals might experience their gender as a combination of different aspects or as something that evolves over time. It's a way to describe a gender experience that is more complex than the standard options. Multigender. Multigender people identify with more than one gender, either simultaneously or at different times. Imagine having a collection of gender identities that you can switch between or experience all at once. This can include feeling like multiple genders simultaneously or shifting between them based on context or personal feelings. It's about embracing a broad spectrum of gender experiences. Muxche. Muxche is a term used in Zapotec culture in Oaxaca, Mexico, to describe people who are assigned male at birth, but take on a feminine gender role. Muxes often fulfill important cultural roles and are considered a distinct gender category in their community. This identity highlights how gender diversity is recognized and respected in different cultures, and shows that gender categories can be deeply rooted in cultural traditions. MTF. MTF stands for male to female and refers to transgender individuals who were assigned male at birth, but identify and live as female. This might involve transitioning through hormone therapy, surgery, or other means to align their physical appearance and social role with their gender identity. It's a powerful expression of living authentically and making the external world match how they truly see themselves. Demi-boy and demi-girl. Finally, we've got demi-boy and demi-girl. These terms describe people who feel a partial connection to being male or female. It's like having one foot in the door of a gender, but not fully stepping inside. For demi-boys, there's a connection to masculinity, but it's not the whole story. The same goes for demi-girls and femininity. It's a reminder that gender isn't always an all-or-nothing deal.
If you want to improve your mind and satisfy your hunger for knowledge, evolve your brain by liking and subscribing. Let's advance our intelligence together. I'll see you next time.